Yo, I don't usually do this, but I have said multiple times that I'm going to start posting up some of the stuff that I find, like rather through garage sales, or if I find them at the Goodwill, or an auction, or an estate sale. And I figured that today was one of the greatest scores I've had in a long time at the Goodwill of all places, and I've had some pretty good scores at the Goodwill. So today I do have by far the greatest score that I've ever had, to be completely honest. I'll go over this a little bit more in greater detail, but I'll just give you the quick look at what exactly I was able to pick up. So you already know I'm a big fan of GameCube, and I have a huge GameCube collection. But we were able to pick up all of these GameCube games. And all of these GameCube games, including Pokemon Coliseum, for $50. $50 for this. No manual, unfortunate, but $50, that's great for the case and the game. Then, of course, I asked them, there's no way that this many GameCube games came in with no GameCube, and there was a complete GameCube with 2 controllers, all of the cords, and I know people will ask, there was no game in it. I checked. The cords, great. There was also, and a Wavebird with the adapter. Amazing find. And then, of course, the last thing, when I was checking out, I only found the GameCube games and the GameCube itself. I went and checked, I found a couple other things. I found like a D&D book. I love D&D, so I'll always pick up like D&D stuff. A couple shirts, they were cool, just in case anybody wants to see. It's a Ron John Surf Shop from Key West, and this Benny Gold shirt. It was pretty cool. But I'm checking out, and I went, and when I was checking out, the lady said, "Oh, did you find the 64?" And I'm like, "I didn't see a 64." And she walked over there, she's like, "Oh, it's still here." And there's a 64 as well. Look at this, an embroidered 64 case with the entire 64 in it, and 2 64 controllers, classic gray and atomic purple. And of course I'm not gonna just stop there. So let's take a look at the 64. Check this out, with the red expansion pack too. What? Oh, and I didn't even see this. Bonus Power Rangers Rescue. And that guy. I think that was it. But yeah, look at that. That is easily the craziest score I've ever had at the Goodwill. Now that we got a chance to see some of the things I just picked up, I wanted to kind of break them down individually so you can get an idea of what exactly I got and kind of the value behind it. I'm not going to go too much into how much I paid for it or how much I am expecting to make from it, because a lot of these things that I just picked up are actually going to go into my personal collection, which doesn't make it really easy to make a profit on it. But most of this stuff is for me to try to retain as much as possible, specifically for the things that I want. A lot of it is to offset the cost of how much it costs to actually build your collection up. So some of it I might explain how much I'm going to be able to make on it. So for starters, one of the coolest things I was able to pick up was, as you saw, that Nintendo 64. Now that one had the red expansion pack in it. If I take the red expansion pack out and I leave one of the controllers that came with it, I will definitely be able to make my money back on just the console itself. So what that means is that I'll be able to keep that Power Rangers game And as of this recording, I haven't looked up how much it costs, but a lot of 64 games go roughly for $15 on the low end on average anyways. So it's just a nice little $15 bonus. The expansion pack is roughly $50. So from there, I'm probably going to be able to make a minimum of $50 back on that one. And the coolest thing out of that lot I was able to get was this Nintendo 64 in beautifully embroidered case. The whole thing is really great condition. It's a little bit dirty, so I might have to clean it out just a little bit. You can kind of see the dirt on the handles. So I'll have to give it a little bit of cleaning, but I've never seen this guy before. So honestly, this one could possibly get me some good value out of it and maybe hook me up to a double up on that buy. Then the next thing that I was able to pick up was that GameCube. That alone, reselling that one, I'm basically going to be able to get my monies back on that one. But the bonus was the Wavebird controller. Now these guys can go for anywhere between $60 to $80 depending on it. The kicker for it is always if it has the sensor. And this one was actually in pretty good condition. I have to clean it up a little bit, but for the most part, look at this guy. He's very, very clean. The only downside is there's a little bit of scuffs on the very bottom of the handle, but that's really hard to avoid, especially with the silver controllers, just because they're so old and if they've been played a lot, it's almost impossible to find them without that little scuff on the back of the controllers. Interestingly enough, as of recording this, not only did I have this one Wavebird controller, which was the first one I've ever been able to pick up for the collection, the same day of recording this, I found another one. Now this one is not as good. It is missing its grip on the joystick, but this one I will be able to take it apart and take one of my more junky GameCube controllers and I will just replace the joystick with the junky one. Meaning I will now have two Wavebirds with both sensors. Those together, I could probably lot them for $150, somewhere around there. I can at least get $100 off the set. So for the console related stuff, I was able to get a couple of things that are gonna actually be rather good for my collection or make a little bit of my money back on it, but nothing too crazy. Now for the games, they are the most complicated part because a majority of these ones were ones that I actually did not already have in my collection. So a lot of them are going to actually stay in the collection, and hopefully anything from those consoles I'll be able to make some money to be able to offset that cost. Now all of these games that I just picked up, they were on the lowest $7 a piece. A couple of them were a lot more, but I will try to explain that as best as I'm showing them off. So the day that I actually picked up these games, I did leave some of them behind, and I actually went back the next day on my lunch break just to see if there was any more games, because they did tell me the previous day that there was going to be a couple other games they were going to put out they hadn't had a chance to process yet. And I left a couple of them behind because they were low value, but I've finally been convinced to actually just start picking up the ones that I just don't have in the collection for filler, just for the time being until my collection is more high value, and then I'll start weeding out some of the lower end titles, should I say. So a couple of the ones that I left behind that I actually went and grabbed the next day were these three: Lord of the Rings, Street Racing Syndicate, and Medal of Honor. I will say that all of these games are incredibly clean. They have really good manuals. The discs are in great condition. So all of these were just great pickups just because I know all of them are in great condition. Especially Medal of Honor. Medal of Honor was actually absolutely so clean. Just take a look at it. The manual is completely crisp. You could just see how the glare on it shows pretty much it's flawless. The disc is absolutely clean. And that's just an example of how all these games are going to look. Each one of these ones were about $7. That's about what they're worth. Most of the GameCube games go for about $10 each. But I figured it's good. It was good value since I knew that they were pretty clean and that they were filler titles that I just don't have. The next one that I actually picked up on the day was Worms Blast. It's a great game. I did not have it on my collection. It's a low value, so not anything too crazy. Completely clean. Two games that I absolutely love. I loved playing GoldenEye on the 64, and these two games were actually great on the GameCube. I played them both as a kid, and actually my favorite of the two is Nightfire. It's got this really interesting multiplayer map where you're at a resort, where it has a trolley that goes between two resorts. I thought it was a lot of fun because you used to do this briefcase mode where you actually could shoot a missile out of the briefcase, and you could just camp inside the trolley as it goes around the map, and it's essentially bulletproof. It's really hard to shoot somebody inside the trolley, and you could just keep spamming missiles out of the trolley. It was a lot of fun, and I definitely love that game. Next one is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, another game that I loved playing as a kid. This one also was low value. I picked it up for $7. The game was completely clean. I did not have it in my collection, so I figured it was a great pickup. This one I was really excited to get was Resident Evil 4. I've really been avoiding picking up the Resident Evil series, but it's one that I definitely want to add into my collection here next, is all of the Resident Evil games for the 64. Resident Evil 4 is a low value, along with Resident Evil 0. They're usually between $10 to $20, depending on the condition. The only issue with me with Resident Evil 4 is most of the time when I see it listed, it doesn't have both the disc, the manual's kind of janky, the case is kind of janky, and this guy was just completely mint. I love how well conditioned the manual is. As you can see, it's crisp, has both the disc, very clean. It was also for $7, so that one was an easy steal. Hopefully this will motivate me to pick up the rest of the games, but 4 of the heavy titles for Resident Evil for the GameCube are $100 or more, so it will be a while before I'm able to get the last of them in my collection. Two new ones that I picked up were the Need for Speed games, Underground 2 and Need for Speed Most Wanted. Both of them are great games that I didn't have in my collection, both of which I also got for $7, which I think that they're worth a little bit more. These would have definitely been ones that would have been good to flip. For reference, Need for Speed Underground 2 on the PlayStation goes for roughly $15. I've sold it actually a handful of times already for the PlayStation one, so I'm imagining the GameCube one's going to be at least the same, if not more, just because it's on the GameCube and it might be a little bit more rare. So these ones would have been great to flip, but because I don't have them in my collection for $7, they were easy to just pick up and just add. Next one is Time Splitters 2. Also got this one for $7. The thing is I actually owned Time Splitters 2 last year, and I found it at another flea market, and it was Player's Choice Edition, so I sold it. And I regretted selling it since because I haven't found it again. But now there are no more regrets because I have the black label version of it. I sold this one for $25 for the Player's Choice version. And just as a reference, Player's Choice and black label on the GameCube, Player's Choice is yellow, black label is actually usually the original copy that was made, and then Player's Choice was added in depending on how well the game had sold, and is a second release of the game. So Time Splitters 2, if I sold a Player's Choice version for about $25, this one's going to be at least $25. So for $7, it's a great pickup. But once again, unfortunately, it's going into my collection, so we won't be making any money on that. Now, 2 of my personal favorite ones that I was able to pick up were both Beautiful Joe 1 and 2. These games are so great. They are so colorful. The games themselves are absolutely fun. They're not a long, complicated game, so you can easily just pick this game up and just beat it and just have a good time. The art is great. The only issue for me is that every time I've tried to pick up these games, they're usually valued pretty high when they are kind of common, and there's always an issue with it. Rather, the disc doesn't look good, the manual is kind of scuffed, or the case itself is not that great. So being able to see both of these in person, these ones I paid $10 each. Great value. They're about $20 to $25 each. So it was a really great value to finally add these ones in the collection, and that I got to see them in person to know that they were clean. Now moving on to a few heavy hitters. The first one is Def Jam Vendetta. It's a Player's Choice version, unfortunately, but still a great one to find. The Def Jam games are heavily sought after for almost every system, especially certain titles. This one, I almost felt that I had overpaid for it. I paid $40 for this one, and when I looked at its listings, it was around $25, I want to say. But after I looked at it a little bit more closely, it does look like it consistently goes for $40. So unfortunately, I did pay pretty much the value for it, but because I don't have it in my collection and I was able to see it in person and see how clean of a copy it was, look at that, absolutely immaculate, beautiful game. I figured that one was a win. Now, the only stinker of the entire buy was Mega Man X. It's a great game. Unfortunately, it was missing the manual. I paid $35 for this guy, and it roughly goes complete for $25-$30. So I definitely lost some value on this guy, but it's not too big of a deal given the fact that I got so many games for such a great value that it's all right to like miss on a couple of them, because essentially at the end of the day, that whole GameCube lot that was in there, I picked up every single one of those games, and they were all, for the most part, great value. Now, moving on up, the next best value game I was able to get was Custom Robo. I also got this guy for $35. It goes for roughly $75, so it was a double up easily. It's a hard one to get into your collection because it's definitely uncommon, and to get it in such great condition is amazing. This guy is completely clean. Look at how clean that disc is. It is great. Manual is absolutely flawless. It actually looks like a really cool game where you can customize your weapons, you can destroy like buildings and stuff like that. It's one that I always wanted to play when I was a kid, but I was never able to own it, and it was also never one of the games that I rented from like Hollywood Video or Family Video or anything, because there's always other games that I kind of wanted to play, and I never got a chance to really get to it. So moving on to the very last games I was able to get in that lot, two of the best games that you possibly can get. The first one of which is Super Smash Bros. Out of all of the games, this was the only one that was not in an original GameCube case, but thankfully for me, I have some older GameCube cases with some cruddy games. I was able to just swap out the case and put in the insert, take the manual, take the completed game, and make it a complete game. I got this one for $30. It's roughly 60 plus on this guy. It might be more. It is a very, very loved game. This is easily one of the most played games I've ever played in my entire life. It's definitely one that has made me a competitive player, and I can't say anything greater about this game. For $30, great pickup. I already have two of them in my collection. My original one from when I was a kid, and one I was able to pick up from my friend, and now I've been able to find one out in the wild, so I can say that I now have pretty much a trifecta of nostalgia for this game. There are multiple variants of this one, so maybe I might try to pick those ones up later, like a player's choice version, or I think there's like a couple of other variants of it if I'm not mistaken. Now, the greatest of all of the pickups I was able to get for that lot was Pokemon Coliseum. Unfortunately, it is player's choice, but it does not matter if it's player's choice or not. This one did not have the manual. I don't know what it is for all the Pokemon Coliseums that I find for good values and never have the manual. The manual alone goes for about $30 to $40. So that is really unfortunate. It's player's choice, which is also like the lower end one. But the good news for me is I already have a complete Black Label version. I actually have two Black Label versions, one complete and one incomplete without the manual. So now I have 3 copies of Pokemon Coliseum and able to have the variant of player's choice to actually have in. So I thought this was a great one to find. The disc alone goes for $100 for this game. So to get it for $50 was an absolute steal. And I'm glad that I can have 3 of these in my collections and have 2 different variants. And since we're here, I might as well give you a couple of bonuses, because like I said, as of recording this, I did pick up a bunch of extra things. As you can see, that I was able to pick up a second Wavebird, which was just absolutely awesome. So another game that I was able to pick up today, which I was so happy to get, was Legend of Zelda, the 2-disc version. This is one that I wasn't sure if it was the one that I was missing. So I am now finally have completed the entire series of Legend of Zelda games for the GameCube, which was super happy for me. The other ones that I had were Legend of Zelda: The Four Swords, absolutely amazing game. Twilight Princess, amazing game. Wind Waker, probably one of my favorite Legends of Zelda of the entire series. And then the one I wasn't completely sure on was the Legend of Zelda: The Collector's Edition. I wasn't sure if I had this version or I had this version, and I was missing one of them, and I was almost positive I did not have this one, so I decided to pull the trigger, and it was the one I was missing. Now, all of these have different variants, and that's one thing that I'll try to work towards in the future, but just to say that I have all of the actual games for the GameCube library for those particular ones, I'm so happy to complete. The last GameCube game pickup I was able to get today was Kirby's Air Ride, and this one is absolutely clean. Great game as well. I picked it up for $65, which is actually not that bad. The game runs about $70 to $75, and after allotting it all the things that I got together, I probably got this guy for like $58, $59. So it's a pretty good value to get to it. The only reason I picked it up is because I thought it was like okay value, and I was almost positive the version that I already had was a player's choice one, so I was kind of like happy to be able to get a black label. But when I came home, I realized I already had the black label version of Kirby's Air Ride. So now I have two, and unfortunately, the one that I just got was not for as good of a price as the one that I originally got, so it is what it is. We got two copies of Kirby's Air Ride in the collection. No problem for me. And I will just give you guys a couple of other bonus things that I was able to pick up. I do find things pretty much every week. I'm just always not sure if I should try to show off some of the things I was able to pick up. Sometimes it stays in my collection. Sometimes it's something that I flip for. I don't know if any of this is interesting to anybody in terms of just seeing what you can get a profit for, or just things that I specifically am adding into my collection. But I figured I'll just show off a couple of things I was able to grab. I was able to get Fire Emblem on the 3DS, and the last game I was able to pick up, which was one of my favorite pickups of this weekend, was Pokemon Black 2. Unfortunately, it is cart only, and the cart itself goes for like about $110 to $120. Interesting story is last year I realized Jam had Pokemon Black 2 and I had the Pokemon Black 2 case, and I never realized it and able to complete them, but I sold it for, I want to say, about $130 or $140 last year. But that game has been skyrocketing in value, so to be able to get it back and to potentially get a chance to put it back in the collection if I can find the case for it is just absolutely amazing. It's one that I for sure want to have. That is essentially the highlights of everything I was able to find during this week. Thank you guys for watching the video. If it's something that you're interested in, please just say it in the comments. Let me know on Twitter if it's something that you like or not. Of course, I'm always going to be doing Pokemon Go content, but I definitely want to start showing off some of these cool things that I'm able to find. And if it's anything that's interesting to you, you can always send me a message. I'm always willing to trade. I will definitely sell you some of this stuff, especially if you're somebody who follows me. You know, I'll definitely hook you up with a good deal. Just let me know. And until next time, have a good week.